And we're back. Quirky music is playing.
Oh.
Hello, and welcome to your favorite book. I am Tanner.
I'm Mallory.
We're siblings.
And we love books.
And on today's episode, we read Enna Burning by Shannon Hale. Woohoo!
Oh, yeah.
This is one of Mallory's favorite books.
Uh-huh.
It's the second book in the Bayern saga.
The Books of Bayern.
The Books of Bayern. Yes. Oh, I like that.
I do too. Most people just call it the Goose Girl series, though. No one knows it by Books of Bayern.
The Books of Bayern is nice because this is kind of a soft sequel to the Goose Girl, I would say.
Yeah.
Where Izzy, who is the protagonist of Goose Girl, she is in this book and she plays a large role in it.
Mm-hmm.
But the protagonist is Enna.
Yay!
Who's Izzy's best friend from the first book. And I don't know what the third book is, or if there are any other books in it, but like, I love it when you name your trilogy or your saga after like the inheritance cycle or something, where it doesn't define exactly how many books are in your series.
Yeah,
I think that's fun.
I enjoy that too, and it's fun to be able to rotate and cycle through the different characters and get their perspectives, which are unique from each other. There's 2 more books, and both of those last 2 books are also from different main characters as well.
Okay. And have you read those?
Yes.
Really? I'm not surprised. Enna Burning is one of your top 5 favorite books.
Yes, I love this book so much.
As we discussed in our top 5 favorite books video from a million years ago, it feels like. So I'm not surprised that you've read all the books in this series. You told me that you've read this book maybe 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, at least.
So when did this love affair begin with you? This book?
I remember reading, I think I started with Princess Academy by Shannon Hale.
Right.
In like 4th or 5th grade.
Is that a part of the Bayern books?
No, but it's a trilogy. All of them are really great too.
Right.
I started with just the first Princess Academy. There was only one at the time. And then I found Goose Girl. And I read Goose Girl, Enna Burning, and River Secrets. And then had to wait for Forestborn to come out. And Forestborn came out when I was in 5th grade. And I remember like waiting up all night to read it. And my mom read it first in a whole day. And I wrote in my journal. It's the only entry in this whole journal. Today, Forestborn came out. My mom read it in one day. One day I want to read as fast as her. And that's cute. It. But I love this series so much because I read it at such a formative age, and it was my first introduction to YA fantasy, I guess. Even though I was in 5th grade, I was a bookworm. I always have been. And yeah, I just love these books. I reread them pretty frequently because of it. So.
Yeah. One thing that's been interesting to me about this podcast is we've been discovering the types of books that we do and don't like. We have very different tastes.
Yeah, we do.
Which I did not anticipate before doing this podcast. I thought you would love Red Rising as much as me. And then when you didn't, I was like, aw.
I liked it.
Yeah. I'm just saying.
It wasn't my favorite.
And I think the feeling is mutual.
Yes, it goes both directions. And I remember when we first started it, we're like, we'll just read fantasy books. No issues. We're going to love every book we recommend to each other. And then we were like, wah.
Now I don't know if I want you to read The Way of Kings. So I understand your apprehension. We've talked about it both outside of the podcast with me reading this book because it is one of your favorites. And just to rip the Band-Aid off early, it isn't one of my favorites.
I'm not
but
surprised.
I did enjoy it, and I can see how you would really like it.
Okay.
I liked Goose Girl more, personally, and we'll get into the reasons why. Goose Girl, to me, I think the biggest difference between the two is that Goose Girl had a very clear and concise goal for Izzy, even though like her internal journey was relatively similar. I think you respond to books about characters, specifically female characters, who are looking to find their destiny or who sometimes are like looking for social mobility, maybe.
Yeah.
Enna's kind of that way, where she goes from being a forest-born, which is like a second-class citizen in the Kingdom of Bayern, to a fire mage and
a war hero,
the Queen's personal maiden,
yeah,
stuff like that. And I mean, that happens in every book basically, right? It's like the pauper becomes the prince.
Yeah. I love that. I love that crap.
And I do too. I think you respond really deeply to stories about someone like Enna or someone like Izzy who are trying to find their destiny or find where they really belong.
Yeah, almost all of my favorite books are that exact thing.
Yeah.
It's my typecast for reading.
Right. And mine is like, I really like stories about leadership. Like Red Rising or Ender's Game, yada, yada.
Yeah.
I think with Goose Girl, why part of what makes it so great is that we have a very clear goal for Izzy. Izzy is born in the kingdom of Kildenry, and her mother sends her off to be married to Bayern, the Prince of Bayern, because the two nations are at war.
Yeah.
And this is a way to peacefully resolve that potential conflict. And while they're traveling, Izzy and her band to Bayern, her handmaiden, Celia, the snake, which is the only way that I can remember her name. I think of the word snake and then I think Celia.
Yeah, there you go.
Very clever name in this book series, might I add. The handmaiden Celia overthrows, basically, betrays her friend Izzy and
pretends to be
masquerades as the crowned princess. And so the goal for Izzy in the entire book is very clear from the get-go, which is get her crown back.
Yep.
She considers leaving Bayern, going back to Kildenry and saying, "Mommy,
help
Celia."
Me.
And Celia is trying to make Bayern go to war with Kildenry because it's in her best interest. Anyway, it's a great adventure story. And the second act of that book is filled with Izzy being a goose girl, tending geese, going from prince to pauper, princess to pauper, pardon me. It's a nice reverse version of that story while also being like an ugly duckling story where Izzy, she feels like she's a goose among geese, a swan among geese, right?
Yeah.
So it's very layered thematically. Everything matches together and meshes. And the plot stays very consistent and she makes progress slowly throughout the book towards getting back her crown.
Yeah, it's paced really, really nicely too.
Yes. And meanwhile, she's learning how to use this new magic, being able to communicate with wind. So all of those 4 different types of progress.
Yes.
The plot, the external progress, the internal progress, the ugly duckling story, finding her family, the world building type of progress, learning the magic system, the relationships, falling in love and making friends. All that stuff is really well done. So it's very difficult and almost unfair to compare Enna Burning to Goose Girl in my mind. Just because I feel like Goose Girl is so well written. Yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from. I think part of why Goose Girl does so well is because it's based off of a fairy tale that has been retold and remastered so many times that it almost seems like a foolproof plot. Right. And Enna Burning is not that at all. No, maybe I'm not familiar with the original fairy tale, so I can't speak to that. But maybe that would have helped Enna Burning for me a bit. Yeah, turned it into another retelling. Yeah, or something like that. I don't know. I feel like even if you're basing your story off of a fairy tale, she still had to do all this work to like integrate the magic system into the plot, making sure that Izzy is a relatable character who makes a good sense of progress towards her goal. She still wrote the whole book. She still wrote the whole book. The plot is really consistent. We should describe what Enna Burning is actually about. Yes. What that story is. Enna Burning follows about, I think it's like a year after Goose Girl ends. I think that's where it is. It's been a while. And Enna has gone back to her home in the forest to take care of her family. Because her mom died. Her mother got sick and then passed away, so she's taken over her household. And she has an older brother named Leifer who is kind of becoming unrestful in his day-to-day life, just like Enna is. Enna really is chomping at the bit for more excitement than just sitting in her forest and taking care of the goose. So there's your I want to find my destiny story. Exactly. And Enna's older brother Leifer finds a vellum that gives him instructions on how to speak fire, basically. He becomes a fire wizard. And this causes him to become pretty erratic and aggressive, and he hurts Enna, and so she runs back to the castle and is like, Izzy, I need your help. I don't know what to do. My brother's
in trouble and I don't know how to help him. And
an important element to that is Leifer tells her that the Forestborn have been treated like second-rate citizens, and he's going to start up a rebellion with some of the other boys who feel like the Kingdom of Bayern have been treating them unfairly.
Yes.
So that's what Enna warns her friend Izzy about, who's the crown princess.
Yeah, she's saying there's unrest in your kingdom.
Yeah.
And Izzy, since book 1, has evolved in her own personal powers, and so much to the point that now, before in book 1, she could call the wind to her and do simple things with it, and now the wind searches her, and she is almost, I'd say, mentally unstable because she's so overwhelmed by the wind speech in her head. Basically.
So the wind can carry information to Izzy from anywhere. And there's air all around her at all times. So she's constantly bombarded with information that she can't control.
Overstimulated.
Yeah. So she and Enna lock themselves in a closet with blankets and stuff where there's very little air. And that's where Izzy feels like she can actually speak with someone and have a normal conversation. It was great, and actually, to me, quite alarming to read about.
Yeah, I remember first reading that, and then there's a moment when Izzy's in that clouded closet, and she shows Enna just how powerful she's become.
She scares her friend.
The wind is whipping around them and pulling the air out of her lungs, and she's like, holy
picking her
crap.
up off the ground.
Yeah, and Izzy's just like, I'm fine.
Izzy's like, I'm sorry, I kind of lost control there for a second.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, and it's fun to see the cost of her magic system that we've set up in book 1.
It's really smart.
And it serves for a good warning for later on in the book, too.
Yes. It's really important to establish that at the beginning. Like, this is the cost of using this magic. And Enna is tempted to use fire speaking because she thinks maybe she can help Leifer control his powers because he's changing in unexpected ways. He's not the same temperate, cool-headed, level-headed, older brother that she used to know.
Yeah.
And she wants to ask Izzy, like, hey, is there any way that I can help? And Izzy's, and she tells Izzy, maybe I can learn fire speaking to help Leifer. And Izzy says, be careful because this is what might happen to you. I'm going crazy.
Yeah, and even Izzy is like, wind is relatively calm compared to something as aggressive as fire.
Fire can't exist without destroying something.
Yeah.
She has great lines like that in this book.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I always love all the wordsmithing in all of Shannon Hale's books.
Yeah, occasionally she'll hit you with a really good line.
Like there's a line between Enna and one of her love interests, Finn, and Enna is like, I should be more patient like you. And Finn's like, you don't have to be patient. I'm patient enough for the both of us.
Yeah, I love that.
And it was more complex than that, but it was really pretty and thoughtful.
Yes, just really quickly.
Yeah.
That's a brilliant way to establish a relationship between your characters just with 2 lines of dialogue.
Yeah.
Like, even just you describing it to me, it makes me feel really good about those 2, right?
Yeah.
So she has that skill to be super succinct with her writing.
And she does a great job at characterizing her characters without being like, he was really smart.
Yes, thank you. Okay, can we talk about this?
Yes.
I know you're describing what the story is.
No, you're fine.
But that's my big problem with someone like Sarah J. Maas. And I know that this podcast has become me bashing on Sarah J. Maas
It once
episode.
was a Brandon Sanderson conversion podcast, and now it's a Sarah J. Maas hate podcast.
Yes, because hate is stronger than love. But that's what Sarah J. Maas does, and it bugs me. I think she's improved. Like, Akatar is a better written book to me than Throne of Glass, and I think Throne of Glass is her debut, so it's a little unfair. But that was the problem in Throne of Glass, is like, she would tell you what this character is like, but she wouldn't characterize it.
Yes.
And you do that through dialogue and through actions. That's something that Suzanne Collins has mastered. Like, The Hunger Games is brilliant. The first few chapters are just incredible, establishing these characters and their relationships with one another. And Shannon Hale, the exact same thing. This first conversation between Leifer and Enna is so brilliant because without... Okay, it's called Maiden Butler dialogue. I don't know if you're familiar with that term.
I'm not.
So Maiden Butler dialogue is when the author's writing dialogue that feels like they're trying to explain to the writer, or I'm sorry, to the audience what's happening through dialogue, instead of the characters speaking to each other.
Yes.
I did a bad job of explaining that.
No, I followed it.
Okay.
It's what we've been talking about, so I think you're
right. It's when the dialogue feels expository, where it's like, you know, Leifer, you've been going outside a lot and you're going to stir up trouble one day or something. Like, it feels really stingy.
Yes.
But she writes very natural dialogue that delivers the pertinent information to the story to make you understand Enna is dissatisfied with her life.
Yeah.
And her mother died. And she and Leifer have not been getting along since then. And they both want to move on and find something more. But they disagree with how to do that.
Yeah.
Enna wants to return to the city, and Leifer wants to burn the city down.
Yeah.
So I know that was like a really big tangent, but that's just to say,
it's great.
She's really brilliant with dialogue and characterizing her characters.
Yeah, well, there's a moment when Leifer hurts Enna. He burns her, and he runs away and is gone for like 3 or 4 days. And when he comes back on, the description that Shannon Hale writes for him is, you could see the fir needles imprints on his face. Yeah. He's been sleeping outside in the woods because he was too ashamed to come back, and he won't even look at her. He won't even say anything because he doesn't know how to say, what have I done?
I'm sorry to set you on fire.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And then Enna's response to that is so aggressive, and then in her own inner dialogue, she's like, why can't I just... Like, even she's like, wow, I really lashed out at him. Couldn't we have a normal conversation? But nope, we're both too fiery for that.
Right.
It's the same thing. It's fantastic.
It's a really underappreciated skill to put you in the mind of these characters super efficiently.
Yeah.
That's part of why the book is so short, I think. Is because she can so easily put you in these scenes.
Yes.
That's how I felt through the entire book. Even though I did have problems with it, just in terms of plot mostly. Character motivations I felt were fine. Magic system I felt was good. I enjoyed that she gave her magic more of a cost. But just to explain what the plot of this story is actually about, largely it's about the kingdom of Bayern going to war with the kingdom of Tira. So Izzy is from a kingdom called Kildenry, and in this book she introduces a third kingdom called Tira. Maybe it's mentioned in Goose Girl. I don't remember. It doesn't really matter. They don't play a role until this book, right? And the story is about Enna ending the war between Tira and Bayern.
Yes.
In a way, right? Really, I think what the story is about is Enna learning how to master her powers of fire. And then her ending the war is just kind of like a part of that path.
Yeah.
But for me, what I really loved about Goose Girl is at the beginning of the book, she's going to become the crown princess. And at the end of the book, she becomes a crown princess.
Yes.
Right.
It's more straightforward.
Not only is it straightforward, yes, but the plot is ended at both ends. It's got like a bookend on both ends. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's established at the beginning and it's resolved at the end. And all the other conflicts are tied into those plot points. And to me, my problem was that it felt like, okay, the beginning of the story, it's kind of introduced as maybe there's going to be a rebellion between Bayern and the Forestborn.
Yeah.
Like, Leifer threatens to murder Izzy to Enna's face before setting his sister on fire.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, here we go. Interesting antagonist.
Yeah.
A sympathetic antagonist. Very sympathetic. He feels like he and his people have been treated like second-rate citizens. And his sister, the protagonist, is going to be torn between, am I loyal to my family, my brother, and my people? Or am I going to be loyal to Izzy, my best friend in the kingdom of Bayern? I thought, wow, there's so much potential here for great themes to be expressed about, like, when should you fight? When is violence okay? And how do you change oppressive systems? Like, I love those deep social conversations.
Yeah, that's part of why you love so many of those leadership kind of
yeah,
stories
that is part of it too. It's why I like Red Rising. It's why I liked The Hunger Games. I just didn't feel like it stuck the landing by book 3. It's a whole another discussion. It's why I love Guards, is that it very subtly tackles those problems. And I thought that's what we were going to get here. And our protagonist was going to be very interesting.
Yeah.
Because they're not the one who's like leading the rebellion. Like in Red Rising, it's very cut and dry. Darrow, his wife, is murdered by the Golds. What's the story about? Him overthrowing the Golds. It's about revenge.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly fine. It's not a slight against us, that book. I love that book. But Enna's a bit different.
Yeah.
because she does not see the kingdom of Bayern as being quite as evil as Leifer does.
Yes.
And there are reasons for that.
Mm-hmm.
But the second part of the book, the second act, is not Bayern versus the forest folk. It's not a rebellion story. It becomes Bayern versus the kingdom of Tira.
Yeah.
And Enna deciding that she needs to win that war.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, there was less of a personal connection between her and the war against Tira than there was against her going to war with her brother.
Yeah, I can understand that. I still think it hits all of those boxes with the way that it goes. After the war with Tira has begun, basically. Mm-hmm. And the king and queen create 3 new 100 bands from the forest folk. So 300 soldiers to come and help. And it unites them with the Bayern front, and it helps them feel included. And that kind of checks the box of Leifer feeling like they haven't been included.
Sure, but I have my disagreements with that. But keep going.
No. That's my preface for what happens.
Okay.
I'm just catching people up on the plot.
Yes.
Leifer then goes, oh, okay, I'm on board with the Bayern. I'm going to go kill the Tyran armies. And he changes allegiance pretty quickly, which, in my opinion, gets explained and...
Yes, you're right.
Later on in the plot.
Yes, I agree.
But then we morph from, like you said, forest folk versus Bayern to Bayern versus Tira. And we get to witness this first battle, and it kind of shell shocks a lot of the young warriors who were so excited to come and fight, and then they witness what battle is like. Leifer uses his fire abilities to help in the war so much that he ends up burning himself from the inside out. And
he can't control it.
Yeah, he surrenders and loses his life to the fire.
Yeah.
That's where Arc 2 kind of starts to pick up.
Yes.
Enna is so mourning the loss of her brother, and she finds that same piece of vellum that taught him how to do fire speak. So she takes it and then has to decide whether or not to learn it or to
She's always
stay
been
in her
curious
old
about
life.
It. Yeah.
Yeah.
That temptation to learn how to use fire speaking has always been there. And it makes sense because at the beginning of the book, she says that she's dissatisfied with her life and she wants more. She idolizes her friend Izzy.
Yeah.
So, of course, that makes perfect sense why she would want to use fire breathing as well. Who knows? She might be able to find her own Prince Charming.
Yeah, for sure.
In her own kingdom, right? That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Just really quickly, there is a nice prologue in this book.
Yes, I love the prologue.
We forgot to mention. It's very brief, but it explains what the vellum... or where the vellum comes from, not what it is. It's a nice world building mystery that she establishes very quickly. And this character is carrying the vellum across miles through the countryside and everything behind her.
I think she's even been traveling for like 2 weeks, I think it said.
Yeah, and everything around her has just been burning. And she buries the vellum underneath a tree, and she lies underneath the tree and just lets the fire overwhelm her, and she sets the entire forest on fire. So it's a nice way to establish, like, this is what's going to happen to a character who learns fire speaking.
Yes.
So always establishing the cost first. It's kind of like in Lord of the Rings. I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent here again. When they show you the power of the ring, what it does to you.
Yes.
Not only does it make you live forever, but it turns you into Gollum. And Gollum, creepy, lost his mind, right? So when Frodo picks up the ring, it's like, oh, be careful. You might turn into Gollum. It's great.
Yeah, I love that kind of thing. I also love the relationship that we get between the individual and the fire itself. I really love that part of the magic system where they forge this fierce relationship with fire and how they yearn to give it life again. And it's like, the vellum describes it as everything in this world was once alive with the light of life, and fire can gift that back to things that have died, which I think is really poetic and beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
And I like that every person who we get the perspective of who uses fire fiercely loves and kindles that kind of flame.
To the point where it overwhelms them and they can't control their own actions.
Yes.
So that's where the explanation for Leifer's sudden motivation shift comes from. And they do establish it in hindsight. I had a problem with it at first when I was reading this book. And I got to that point when Leifer was like, I'm no longer mad with Bayern. I'm going to go fight Tira. And to me, it felt like a very sudden heel toe.
Yes.
Like a 180.
Yeah.
And
I think Enna even is like...
Yes,
I think
she's surprised by
She's surprised too.
Maybe I went over that part of it really quickly, because I think what would have helped me is if Enna was like, Leifer is wrong. This is not him. Something that Vellum has overtaken his personality. He's not the same person. Maybe a bit more of that would have helped me be like, oh, okay, so maybe he's not really concerned about fighting Bayern. He just wants a fight.
Yes.
And it could be just me being a dummy, right?
Yeah.
And don't agree to that. Yes. But that is all explained.
Yeah.
Maybe for someone as stupid as me,
no, I don't
push that a little bit farther.
Yeah,
where Enna is confused about his brother not being the same person.
Yeah. I feel like it's there, but I've read this book so many times, and like when you were talking to me about that issue that you had, I was like, I'm pretty sure that gets covered eventually. So I just didn't say anything because I was like, I think you'll get on board eventually for that. But when you're going through it the first time, it is definitely jarring.
Yeah. And you're right. It is explained later on. So I don't have an issue with it because it's a part of the magic system. Yeah. And it's important to explain Leifer just wants to get into a fight, and he eventually...
Fire just wants something to burn.
Yes. He eventually self-immolates during this war. They win the battle even though they're outnumbered against Tira. And it's another way to indicate to the reader, like, if Enna learns how to use magic, then she's going to lose her mind too. Yeah. So all of that makes sense. I think my problem is that the war with Tira kind of comes out of nowhere. And it feels a little disconnected from what Enna's personal journey should be about. Like with Izzy reobtaining her crown, obviously her status, finding who she is really important to her, and learning the magic is integrated in that quest. Yeah. Like if she doesn't learn how to use wind speaking, then she wouldn't have defeated Celia and her goons, right? With Enna, if she never went to war with Tira, I think she could have just learned how to use fire speaking on her own. It could have been an entirely different plot, and it would have been equally as satisfying.
I don't know. I disagree with you there. I think she needed to be able to go through that arc with Selef, who she gets imprisoned by the Tyrian army eventually. And there's a war captain there who keeps her hostage, but he has people speaking, which is another established magic in this world where people can be super persuasive, and people fall in love with them and fall at their feet because of their gift with speaking to people. And I think Enna, if she hadn't had that getting abducted and then them using her to burn for Tira instead of Bayern, if she hadn't had that, I don't think she could have been able to find a balance.
Sure, I agree with you, and I think I'm explaining myself poorly.
Oh, sorry.
No. Don't apologize for my mistakes. I did like the stuff with Selef, and I think everything that happens in the story does explain how she masters her fire powers. And there is a nice arc of her finally learning how to use it at the end of the story. Spoiler alert. What I'm trying to say is, what does it mean to Enna to fight against Tira?
Okay, yeah.
She's fighting against Tira to defend her people.
Yeah.
It feels a little bit too general and not personal enough. So
if maybe a Tyrian soldier snuck in and killed her mother, and that's how her mother died, or well, I mean, they do kill her brother. The Tyrian people kill him
ostensibly, yes. Yeah. And maybe that would have made more sense. To me, at least. So the scene that explains her motivation shift from, okay, Leifer's dead, I'm mourning him, I'm going to learn how to use fire powers to fight the war, is there's an augury. Is that the word?
Yes.
An augury, which is like a champion from Bayern and a champion from Tira are selected to fight before the war begins to the death. Yeah. And whoever wins, they get like some kind of blessing or boon, or like it's destined to be that Bayern is going to win the war. So Finn, is chosen to fight as champion.
Yeah, well, he volunteers.
Right, he volunteers. And he's about to lose, and Enna uses her fire powers to heat up the Tyrion's soldier's sword. Mm-hmm. So he misses.
Yeah.
And then Finn takes advantage of the opportunity to kill him. Mm-hmm. And then Enna says, if I don't help in this war, then we're going to lose. Mm-hmm. To me, that's not as strong of a personal motivation as something like Hunger Games. We always use this example. Everyone knows it.
It's such a good example, and it's so well done.
Yes. Where Prim is described as Katniss's pride and joy. She's chosen to a fight in the Hunger Games, and then Katniss says, I volunteer for her. Mm-hmm. Like, I wanted more of that moment. Or maybe it's there, and I haven't fully figured this out.
Yeah.
But to me, the entire war with the Tyrion Kingdom, I just didn't care about whether she won or lost.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I really like the augury kind of world building aspect. I think it's super interesting. And a lot of the forest-born folk are portrayed as pretty superstitious, and they really enjoy folk tales and things like that. So I feel like Enna participating in that augury was super personal to her. But that's just how I read it and perceived it. Like, even when Enna is talking to Izzy about this, she's like, I know that you don't care about this and you don't believe in this, but I do. They will lose without me. I've sealed my fate with the whole chance of it all. Mm-hmm. I liked it. I see what you're saying, though.
Yeah, no. And I'm really not trying to criticize it or say that you can't like it. Mm-hmm. I'm honestly trying to figure out for myself why it didn't click. For me, it's like a mystery that I have to solve. And I don't know what you could do to make it better, except I did have an idea for a rewrite for this introduction. And I think you could have all these same things and add a little bit more personal motivation to it. Mm-hmm. And I think you could have the Kingdom of Tyr destroy the forest folks' home. And then it would feel more like, okay, now Enna has some personal stake in this.
Yeah.
And it would also support the idea of like Leifer saying that they're treated like second-rate citizens. Like that maybe the forest folk are fighting the people of Tyr on the boundary, and the Kingdom of Bayern doesn't care.
Take it seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
And then Leifer's like, I'm fighting. I have a real reason to fight. I'm defending our home. And after this, and if Bayern doesn't come to our aid, then I'm going to side with Tyra and fight against Bayern.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Just to connect a little bit more to like making the Kingdom of Tyra a little bit more personal.
Yeah.
To Enna. I don't know. It was just an idea. And then during that fight, Leifer could die without the help of the Kingdom of Bayern.
Yeah.
And then Enna could like ask Izzy to help. Like, we need to go get these people back. Like, maybe Finn was captured, and then you have this plot of like Enna needs to learn how to use her fire powers to rescue Finn, who was captured by the Tyrans, whatever. I don't know. It's a completely different rewrite. It still has the same elements, and I think all the elements are there for a satisfying story. It's just a little bit more connected, a little bit more sense to the plot. Now the fight against Tyra means something more to Enna instead of to me, I think the augury felt like she suddenly took it upon herself to fight this war because she believes that she's the only one who can win it. Like, without her help, they would lose. And it felt a little bit less emotional to me. You know what I mean? It makes sense. It's fine. People decide to do stuff like that, of course.
Yeah, especially Enna's character, too.
Sure. And maybe what she didn't say was, I love Finn and I'm doing this for him.
Yeah.
And that was just implied. Because she does love Finn, but she hasn't admitted it.
Yeah, she doesn't understand either.
But she really feels like, I'm going to win this war for my people. And it felt like she was doing it out of national pride.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's not quite as personal of a connection to me.
Yeah.
As like Katniss doing this for Prim, right? And the whole story's about that. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, the second act of this book, she decides to wage this war against Tyra.
Yeah, and she goes into secret camps
and sets tents on fire.
Sets supplies on fire, and does what she can to burn.
Yeah, That's my other issue with this is like, okay, if the story is about waging this war against Tira, then I think I want a little bit more of an understanding of what the obstacles she's going up against.
Yeah.
Like, is she just going to repel this army?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where is this taking place? What's the battlefield like? Are they at Bayern's doorstep?
Well, they've taken over several Bayern cities, and the Tyrans are sitting on the Bayern cities on the edge of the border.
Sure. But then how big's the army? Like, what are they specifically doing to win this war? Are they taking the war to Tira to win it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it felt a little bit vague to me.
Yeah.
I think it would have helped if at the beginning of the story you have the fight in the forest folks' home,
mm-hmm.
and then the story's about repel Tira from the forest folks' home.
Yeah.
That would have helped me imagine, like, what's this battle that's taking place?
So what's the difference if they do it in the forest folks' home versus the other side of...
Because then I have a very specific understanding of what the obstacle is that Enna's trying to overcome.
Okay.
Like, there's 3,000 soldiers in the forest, and here's how I'll defeat them. I'll set a couple of their tents on fire.
Yeah.
Like, that's your plan?
Well, I mean, it is the winter, and she's burning all of their supplies, so I can see how that would have an effect.
Yeah. I'm being really nitpicky. I think what I wanted was, I don't know, a little bit more of like, how are we winning this fight?
Yeah.
How is this happening?
Yeah.
Like, she sets a couple tents on fire and it's like, it doesn't really matter. The point is she's going to fight this final battle eventually, and then I'll just say that the war was won.
Yeah. I think, that's a good point, because in the book, we start with that initial battle, and then it's winter, and so both sides are like, hey, we're going to take a break. Mm-hmm. That is pretty weak to just say, battle paused for Christmas.
That's what it felt like. And then Enna is sneaking around on her own.
Yeah.
She's the only one doing anything, and she sets a couple of tents on fire, and she thinks that will help them win the war. Maybe it will.
Yeah, well, sure. I think there also is the same kind of aspect of the Tyran armies start spreading rumors, and they're terrified about fire witches who are in the Bayern armies. Yeah. So I think that's the same kind of like superstitious kind of stuff that I like from the augury and stuff. But there's not as much of a direct or explicit reason to burn. So, which works for fire. I mean, she's just searching for stuff to burn.
Yeah, but I think that this is where I have to set aside my personal preferences, because I love a book like Red Rising, where it's like, this scene, it's going to be this gigantic space battle, and Darrow has to fly into this ship, take command of it, and then fight the space battle. Mm-hmm. And it feels like I'm watching a video game or cinematic movie unfold. Maybe that's the problem, is I didn't feel like the battle, this war against Tira, was very cinematic, and there was very little that Enna did to actually, make that much of a difference.
Did you like the final battle that she goes and fights after she escapes?
No, I thought it was like Enna uses her fire powers to destroy the entire Tyran army, and then she does, and then that's it. Yeah. To me, it felt like, nope, that's it. Mm-hmm. Like that conflict was resolved so quickly, and all she had to do was just to like let go of all of her fire powers. And there is a nice cost to that, and I did feel like there's a risk of her dying. She even says that she's going to die until Izzy saves her. Yeah. Spoiler alert. But it's not a very well-written action scene. Yeah. Like, none of the action, but I mean, the sword fight, the augury between Finn and the Tyran champion, that was interesting. Uh-huh. I'm just saying, like, she can't write like a good battlefield, like battle book. Yeah. You know what I mean?
It could have been more interesting if she was more hands-on, instead of just standing on a hill and burning from afar. Yeah. I still liked it. I really enjoyed that moment, and it's fun for her to explore surrendering to the fire and how it literally breaks her to do so.
Sure. Like I said, I have to set aside my personal preferences. Mm-hmm. And I'm comparing this to action-adventure books that I love. Yeah. Right? And it's just a very different type of story. Mm-hmm. And I actually really appreciate Shannon Hale not trying to do that, because it would have made it a very different book.
Yeah, for sure.
This book is much more about Enna just learning how to master her fire abilities than anything else. For me, I like it when the book kind of reads like a video game, and you see like cause and effect, and there's more choices like moment to moment in the battle between like the main character and a group of enemies, or like a single villain. Like, what if she went up against a rain-speaking villain in the Tyrian army? They're like, they have fire witches, but we have a rain speaker.
Yeah.
That would have been interesting to me.
Yeah, for sure.
So I hope I'm explaining what I mean well enough.
No, I totally get it.
Yeah. But I think that's part of why it was dissatisfying to me, because most of the second act of this book is a Stockholm Syndrome thing.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating.
Okay.
I think it's so interesting.
I didn't find it that interesting personally, but once again, it's just a personal preference thing. So Enna, she keeps setting these tents on fire, and her friends Finn and Razzo are helping her do this. And they think it's fun and games, like kids playing pranks. That's what it felt like to me. You know, like they're teenagers. They're trying to set the tents in the Tyrian camp on fire, and they'll be like, look over there, and she's distracting people and stuff. It's fun. But she eventually gets captured, and that's after she tries to burn Izzy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so sorry, we should probably explain that.
Yeah, there's a moment when Enna, Razzo, and Finn have been doing that fun and games kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And she gets back to camp, and they're like, okay, we're gonna take a break for a couple weeks. And she's like, what? No, we're just getting started. And Razzo and Finn both express concern for her and her sanity and her ability to not light people on fire. And during this time, the first camp that she set fires in has built a gallows. And she's like, I gotta go burn the gallows. That's it. That's my next goal. And they're like, no. We need to pause. So she tries to leave without them. She's like, fine, I'm gonna go do it myself. I need to go burn those. And the fire in her heart and head is like, gallows, burn the gallows, burn them. And on her way out, Izzy stops her and is like, hey, the wind, this is a part that I love. And the first thing Izzy says to her is, Enna, the wind thinks you're on fire. And Enna's like, if you understood, you would let me go. And there's this moment where they're fighting, and Izzy's like, let me help you. You're not okay. And Enna and the fire sees Izzy as the enemy in her way, and she tries to burn her. And luckily, Izzy uses her wind to deflect that flame before it gets to her and deflect the heat. And then Enna and Izzy both have a moment of, oh my gosh, what just happened? And then Enna runs away and goes to the gallows.
Yeah.
I really love that moment between Izzy and Enna. It's the dialogue is fantastic, and the stakes are super high, and you can see the motivations for both characters coming to a head, and neither character can get what they want without the other person giving up what they want.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah. I think at this point in the story for me, I was just disappointed that there wasn't enough fighting in the actual battle. And there wasn't enough of a personal connection to the actual plot. And I knew where it was going, but I thought it should have gone maybe someplace else, that it didn't feel like the stakes were that high for me. But like I said, I have to put my personal preferences aside.
I mean, Enna literally tries to kill the queen.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And it's mirroring like Leifer setting Enna on fire early in the book. What I'm trying to say is all the pieces are there to make a satisfying story. It just didn't click with me.
Yeah.
Enna runs away. She tries to set the gallows on fire, but she's way in over her head.
And it was a trap to catch her.
And they catch her. I'm not sure why the gallows would attract her to set them on fire. Maybe they're just like someone's setting tents on fire. The gallows, she'll want to set the gallows on fire. Okay. I didn't know that it was a trap set out for her. I just thought they just caught her because she went alone in the middle of the Tyrian camp, and then she was captured.
Silif was waiting. He purposefully planned it.
Oh, okay. Like maybe the gallows were to hang someone that she knew that was captured by the Tyrians?
In the gallows, there's a fake Izzy, a fake Garrick, and a fake Enna hanging.
The scarecrows. Oh, and they're like, this person will definitely try to set this on fire.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. I don't know. See, that's part of where it's like, what's Enna's plan to overthrow to defeat the army?
It's the same thing as Leifer, where the fire doesn't care what it's burning, it just wants to burn.
Okay.
I think.
Sure. Okay, whatever. I'll look past it. Okay, I can't look past it. Why not set up a better trap? Like, why not have them, capture Finn or Razzo on one of their childish raids, and then Enna has to come back and rescue them. And they use Razzo or Finn as bait, and then they capture Enna.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just saying. These are little nitpicks. It's not a problem. That's just something that I would like to see a little bit more reasoning to that.
Yeah.
Because I thought she was just wandering into camp, setting things on fire kind of for fun.
Yeah.
And you could always use the justification of the fires driving her crazy. That's fine. Mm-hmm. It's just not as satisfying to me as a reader. I would like it if I felt like she actually got tricked into,
what if they just said, oh, we've stolen the queen, and Izzy never comes back to the camp because she'd left.
Right.
And they're like, oh, we have the queen. And she's like, I have to go save Izzy. And then there's no queen. It was all fake.
Right. That would have helped. Instead, it's like, I'm going to go into the Tyrion camp to burn some scarecrows. Mm-hmm. It's like, that's not as very strong of a reason. To like throw your life away. And also, if your goal is to destroy the army, why are you burning scarecrows and not like supplies? Like, why not leave these food supplies out in the middle of the street? May as well do that and be like, I'm going to set that on fire. Yeah. I'm going to set on fire all the hay for their horses. Because hay burns real good. Yeah. Anyway, she's captured by Seliph, who is the antagonist of the story. And there's this, it's mostly the entire second act of the book. Seliph convincing her, using his power of people speaking, that she should turn her back away from her own people. And it is interesting. It's kind of like a reverse arc. Most of the story is kind of like a reverse arc. It kind of dips down and then goes back up. And I think that's what's most interesting about the book, is that Seliph does convince her to fall in love with him. And she willfully fights against Bayern. And he uses tricks like eventually Finn and Razor are captured. And he says,
they came here to kill you.
Yeah, they're assassins. Keeps lying to her and watching her kind of spiral into this dark, depressed state where the only thing that's good in her life is Seliph. Yeah. Is sad.
And he's drugging her the whole time.
Yeah. So Seliph is a gross creep.
Yeah.
She writes good villains. Like Selly is a good villain too.
She must have a thing against people with names that start with S.
She must have a thing against attractive people who are good speakers.
Well, that's part of why I like this book too, is like the things that you should be afraid of in this life are the real things. Yeah. Not someone who's going to come and flame you in the night. You got to be afraid of the people who can charm you. Right. I think that's interesting.
No, I completely agree. And I'm on Shannon Hale's side. Right? I'm a cynic too. I think all attractive people are evil.
Yeah. For sure. For sure.
Yes, without a doubt. I think the warning is be careful of who you choose to trust, because charming people can make you forget who you are. They can make you think that the only thing that matters in life is pleasing them. Right?
Can we talk about one of my favorite moments in the book?
I'm sorry, we can't.
Too bad. I'm going to take the microphone and monopolize the conversation.
I'm leaving.
Just kidding. So Enna's stuck in this camp as a prisoner of war who's now burning for Tira. And Seliph is called away to go to the big part of the army from Tira that is coming in to reinforce them and win the battle. And he's like, I'll be right back. Stay here. And then while she's hanging out in her tent, her prisoner tent, a traveler comes into the camp and brings fine wine from a city in Tira. And she's like, whoa, what's happening? And she can hear all of her guards, and there's not as many as there usually are. She can hear all of them drinking and talking, and this woman who's chatting with them, and she can't figure out who it is. And so she walks out to try to be like, what is going on? And she sees that it's Izzy in the camp. Part of Izzy's character is that she's fantastic at imitation and hearing the differences between languages. And so she's disguised her voice to sound like she's from Tira. And she's also chopped off all of her hair, so she doesn't look like she usually does. And she's hidden her way into this camp to tell Enna a story, basically. In the first book, Izzy would tell stories to all of the Forestborn people, and Enna loved it, and everybody loved it. And so it's this nice, comforting thing for her. And Izzy tells a story to Enna that is a roundabout way of telling her, we can't come rescue you. You're going to have to try for yourself, and it's going to be hard. And she also gives her a warning of Seliph is a people speaker. And so that kind of wakes up Enna to be like, oh my gosh, I've been manipulated this whole time. I'm crazy.
Right.
And so I just really love that moment of Izzy coming in and sacrificing her whole self to be like, I love you. Figure it out.
Right. And I did like that Enna had to figure it out on her own. And the way that she escaped Seliph wasn't by her friends just coming out of nowhere and rescuing her.
Yeah.
So it did feel like she was powerless against Seliph. And she tried everything she could to escape, and she does, which is great. The way that she breaks free of her spellbound, being spellbound by Seliph's charm is she overhears a conversation between Seliph and his commander, I believe, saying, I doubted you, Seliph, but you're a great captain and you convinced the Fire Witch to work for us. So you're going to be promoted. And then that's what, that in conjunction with Izzy's warning, helps her break free of like Seliph controlling her.
Yeah.
Although she feels like she's still in love with him after that. Like that's the power of his charm and his people speaking.
Yeah.
Which I thought was great. And it isn't resolved until towards the end of the story.
Yeah.
But she eventually uses her powers to break free in a moment of opportunity. Seliph thinks he's egotistical, right?
Yeah.
So he thinks he has complete control over this woman. I doubt he ever truly loved her. Even for a second. Even though he tells her, I'm in love with you. And after this war, we'll go back in the countryside. Have a big house. 3-story house.
Yeah.
And you'll clean and cook and raise the children and all.
When Enna literally in the first page is like, wow, I would hate to clean and cook and take care of children.
Unless it was for you, Seliph. Anyway, she escapes, saves Razo and Finn. She writes great female protagonists who fill that alpha male lead role.
Yeah.
Right? And they still maintain their femininity. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
What you're saying is she writes realistic female characters.
Yes. Traditionally a male would be in this role.
Yeah, of the leader and
like,
the
I'm the
rebellion.
strongest and the best and I have all the powers, right?
Yeah.
Which is great. I think that's also part of what really
that's why I like it so much.
Stories, right? Speaking for you, don't mind if I do. And she, Finn, Razo escape, return with the Bayern people. And to resolve the war, that's when the final battle takes place. And Enna uses her fire powers. She almost loses control, but Izzy saves her life. And the rest of the story is resolving the arc of Seliph and Enna using her fire powers.
Yeah, because she's gone too far and broken a place inside of herself that could keep the heat, and now she's just constantly fevered and surrounded by heat and burning up slowly.
Yeah. She made 3 promises, I think, to herself at the beginning of the story. The first one was that she wouldn't use fire powers because Izzy asked her not to, I think, if I remember correctly.
It's never burn a person alive, don't tell anyone,
okay.
And no big burning.
Yes, I couldn't remember those 3 things.
Yeah.
But she breaks all 3 of those rules. She can't control the magic the way that she thought she could. She had more control over it than Leifer did because she's stubborn, which I thought was a great little nod to her character.
Yeah.
But at the end of the story, she had to lose control to win the war against Tira, I guess. And we're not going to get into that, but we already talked about it. My problems with that battle.
Anyway.
It's fine to like it. I get that this is the point in the story when the main character is supposed to win the war.
Yeah.
Just the way that it was described, it didn't feel like very satisfying or that she overcame any great odds, other than she basically sacrificed herself in order to do it.
Yeah.
So the rest of the story is about Izzy and Enna traveling together to this southern kingdom where she mentions at the beginning the people there know how to control fire speaking. So they travel through the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. And Enna's getting sicker and sicker, and Izzy is pregnant. Spoiler alert, she's preggo. And on their travels, they run into Seliph.
Yeah.
And he's crazed. He's lost the war.
He's like, I've been tracking you.
Yeah.
I'm in love with you. Come be my wife. And she's like, bro is crazy.
Yeah. And I like that she brought Seliph back.
I do too.
Her to defeat him.
And I also like that even still, when Enna sees him, she's like...
Still in love.
It's good.
Still under his curse.
Yeah, still confused and frustrated.
Yeah. So she and Izzy work together to defeat Seliph by combining their fire and wind powers.
Yeah,
and
which is a really cool moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the end of the story, they defeat Seliph. They find the fire people.
Mm-hmm.
And they teach Enna and Izzy to work together to teach each other how to speak to wind and fire, because wind and fire can tame one another.
Yes.
So Enna's fire can help Izzy overcome her craziness, keep the voices at bay, basically, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. There's balance now.
Yeah. So it's a nice, sweet little resolution.
I liked it.
Yeah.
I liked that it didn't go the way that they were planning for it to go. They initially go down to Yasid to be like, oh, help us. And they're like, oh, someone as bad as Enna usually dies.
Mm-hmm.
We also spend our whole lives dedicated to trying to learn water speech. And it takes decades to master, and that's how we find balance. So we're going to have to burn the fire out of you, and you're going to swallow a literal burning coal.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay.
But you're probably going to die anyway, so you're kind of screwed.
Like, we'll try it either way. And then before they do that, Izzy is speaking to the man from Yasid, and he's like, oh, I didn't know you knew wind speech.
Maybe that will help.
It's the same kind of idea, and so they teach each other their gifts. And I really like that moment. I thought it was interesting and very sweet.
Yeah, it's a cool way to solidify their
sisterly
platonic,
bond.
sisterly bond, that relationship with magic.
And we do get a good moment, too, of Enna having a emotional arc and a mental breakdown a little bit in a good way, where she's like, wow, I never fully mourned my brother who died from this gift that I'm dying from.
Yes, that's very important. I'm sorry I forgot to mention that.
Yeah, but, it's really great, and it's a good closing, because sometimes when you're reading it, you're kind of like, hey, what about your brother?
Why aren't you
mourning? What about him?
Yes, so she does resolve all these conflicts that she establishes throughout the book, and one of them is mourning the loss of her brother, and part of why fire speak is important to her. Not only does it offer her an opportunity at social mobility, it also is a connection to her brother. Even though in his final days he was losing his mind, she knows that wasn't who he is. He was always gentle and carefree. It's tragic the way that he dies. And so at the end of the story, she remembers to say the reason why Enna can't let go of her fire powers. And they try it at first before she and Izzy meld their wind and fire speaking together to give up her fire speaking to save her life. But she can't do it because it's a connection to her brother who died, who she never mourned. So I love that she doesn't have to give it up. She can still have her fire speaking, which reminds her of her brother. And it also, her learning how to speak the wind is a nice symbol of her friendship with Izzy. It's a beautiful little ending.
I love it. It's good.
Yeah, it's really good. Can I talk about my rewrite?
Yes, please. Let's get rewrite number 3 in here.
Okay, I'll just be really brief. So here's what happens. At the beginning of the story, Leifer says, we're treated like second-rate citizens. Because our mom was sick, we took her to a doctor in the city and they denied her health care.
Ooh.
Boom! So that's how you start.
Mic drop.
Okay? And
great commentary on the world we live in.
Leifer will say, there's this guy I've been talking to from the Tira Kingdom.
Ooh, that's good too.
They're attacking our borders and Bayern isn't coming to our aid. And he said that if we join them, they'll spare us. And Izzy will say, no, don't do that. We need peace, not war. And Leifer can say, this is peace. Because Bayern won't treat us like real people. The only way that we can get the rights that we need is through war. So then Leifer joins Seliph. And he and Seliph work together to fight against Bayern. So now you have a war inside Bayern. Izzy and Enna are defending the city. And Enna's struggling with, the only way that we can win is if we defeat Leifer. But who's going to fight my brother? He's a fire speaker. No one can defeat him. Izzy's going crazy. She can't use her powers. Maybe she's in a comatose state or something. She can't fight against Leifer. So Enna has to learn how to use her fire powers to go against Leifer and Seliph. And I don't know how you work in the Stockholm thing. Maybe you can somehow. That's my rewrite.
Pretty good.
And so at the end of the story, you have Enna and Izzy have to use their wind and fire powers together to defeat Leifer and Seliph. It's a very different story. But my problem with the very end of this book is that it felt like you established this big war between Tira and Bayern. There's so many new names that I have to learn. They'll stick in my head eventually. You resolve that war, and then you resolve the antagonist, and then you resolve the magic system. I feel like it would have been more satisfying if you tie those 3 things together where it's like Enna and Izzy have to master their fire and wind powers together to defeat Seliph and win the war.
Yeah.
It's a very different story,
No,
and there's
what
no
you're
point
saying.
in describing any of this. And in fact, we should have ended the podcast 3 minutes ago.
No, it's fun to hear.
But with all that being said, do you have any thoughts on that, or do you care?
I think it's pretty cool. You should write your own book.
All right, is this your favorite book?
Yes.
Okay, would you recommend it?
Yes. Is this your favorite book?
No.
Would you recommend it?
Yeah.
Yay! 50%. It's still an F. Just kidding.
No, it's a good book. It's just not the book that I want to read.
Well, I'm glad you read it.
Totally personal preference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, me too.
Well,
I think that's it.
thanks for joining us. Please leave a like and a comment. Let us know if you like this book and if you prefer Tanner's rewrite.
No one should prefer my rewrite.
We're going to have Shannon Hale herself comment.
Yeah, well, she should. We should have a talk. I'd be like, hey, your book, it's got all these problems and I have the perfect solution. Me, who's never written anything before in my life.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's a good pitch, right?
Yep.
Thank you all for watching. Goodbye.
Goodbye.